The year is 1943. The skies above Europe are burning. Contrails stretch across the blue, twisting like scars of war. High above the clouds, German Luftwaffe pilots spot something new. A strange, bulky aircraft lumbering toward their formation. It looks absurd. Wide wings, a fat fuselage, a nose that seems too big for its own body. The Germans laugh over the radio. Was ist das? A flying milk jug? One jokes. Another chimes in. If that's America's best, we've already won. They call it the Jug. To them it's slow, ugly, an easy kill. But what they don't know, what no one realizes yet, is that beneath that clumsy shell lies a beast unlike anything the world has ever seen. Inside the cockpit, an American pilot wipes sweat from his brow. His call sign, Reaper 1. His heart pounds as he checks the gauges. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt shudders slightly as he pushes the throttle forward. The roar of its Pratt & Whitney engine deepens, a sound that feels less like flight and more like an approaching storm. 8 Browning .50 caliber machine guns sit waiting in the wings. 8 barrels of steel and fire. The Germans dive, confident. They've faced Spitfires and Mustangs before, sleek, fast, elegant. But this is different. Reaper 1 pulls the nose up sharply. The heavy fighter climbs, slow at first, then faster, until the sunlight flashes across its silver wings. The Germans close in, ready for the kill, and then the Jug spits fire. 8 guns erupt in perfect unison, the sound like ripping metal and rolling thunder. Tracers slice through the air, brilliant, merciless lines of light. One German fighter disintegrates mid-turn. Another spirals downward, black smoke trailing behind. The laughter dies instantly. What was once a joke has become their nightmare, because the Thunderbolt, mocked and underestimated, is about to rewrite the rules of aerial combat. And before the war is over, the skies of Europe will echo with its name, Juggernaut. They laughed at the Thunderbolt once, but in the next mission, they wouldn't live long enough to laugh again. Before the Thunderbolt ruled the skies, it was nothing more than a sketch on a piece of paper, a dream born out of desperation, ridicule, and the chaos of war. It's 1940. The world is burning. Europe trembles under the shadow of the Luftwaffe, and America knows it's only a matter of time before it's drawn into the storm. The U.S. Army Air Corps faces a terrifying problem. Its bombers are sitting ducks. They can reach deep into enemy territory, but they can't come back. Without a fighter that can escort them all the way, every mission is suicide. That's when a stubborn, brilliant engineer named Alexander Kartveli steps forward. Kartveli isn't your typical designer. Born in Georgia, the one near Russia, not the U.S., he escaped the Soviet Revolution and found his way to America. By 1940, he's already famous for the P-35 and P-43 fighters. But now, he's facing the challenge of a lifetime. Build a fighter that can survive high-altitude combat. Fly faster, hit harder, and go farther than anything before it. But there's a catch. The brass don't believe it can be done. His proposal sounds absurd. A fighter weighing almost 8 tons, powered by a massive radial engine the size of a car. One general scoffs, "That thing will never leave the ground." Another adds, "We're building a fighter, not a flying tank." Kartveli doesn't flinch. "It will fly," he says quietly, "and it will bring our boys home." Weeks turn into months. The Republic Aviation Factory in Farmingdale, New York, becomes a furnace of innovation. Engineers work day and night, wrestling with design problems no one has solved before. The sheer size of the engine, the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, demands new cooling systems, thicker wings, and reinforced landing gear. Every new feature adds weight, and every pound threatens failure. But Kartveli refuses to compromise. He knows this plane isn't being built to look good. It's being built to survive. Finally, in early 1941, the first prototype rolls out. Sunlight glints off its massive propeller. Workers stare in awe and doubt. The P-47B looks nothing like the sleek fighters they're used to. Wide, heavy, brutish. But when the engine starts, the ground itself seems to tremble. A test pilot named Lowell Ed Davis climbs into the cockpit. He grins nervously, adjusts his goggles, and throttles up. The double Wasp roars, 2,000 horsepower unleashed. The P-47 charges down the runway like a bull breaking free, lifting off heavier than any fighter before it. For a moment it wobbles, everyone holds their breath, and then it climbs, it flies. What follows is nothing short of revelation. The Thunderbolt isn't just powerful, it's fast. In a dive, it reaches speeds over 500 miles per hour. Faster than gravity itself can pull it down. No plane of its time can match that, but what truly shocks the test crews is its durability. On one test flight, a prototype's engine bursts into flames mid-air. Instead of bailing out, the pilot glides it home. The P-47 lands with half its systems gone, but it lands. Another pilot returns with a bullet through the oil tank, something that would have doomed any other aircraft. Yet the Jug stays airborne. Word spreads quickly. A joke in the beginning. The flying barn starts earning a new reputation, the airplane that refuses to die. Still, not everyone's convinced. Pilots complain about its slow climb rate and weight. It feels like flying a refrigerator, one quips. But Kartveli knows the truth. The war isn't about beauty or comfort. It's about who comes home alive. The US finally enters the war. Across the Atlantic, the Luftwaffe's grip on Europe tightens. And as the first P-47s begin rolling off production lines, young American pilots are assigned to test the strange new fighter in real combat. They don't know it yet, but they're about to write the first lines of one of history's greatest aviation legends. Because the P-47, the plane no one believed in, is about to prove that sometimes the ugliest fighter can be the deadliest. Spring, 1943. The airfield at Halesworth, England, smells of oil, mud, and anticipation. The men of the 56th Fighter Group, fresh from the States, are about to face the most feared air force on Earth, the German Luftwaffe. They're young, some barely 20. They've flown training missions over the calm skies of Texas. But this is different. Across the Channel lies occupied Europe, the killing ground. Parked in neat rows, the P-47 Thunderbolts gleam under the grey British sun. Massive, armoured and loud, they look nothing like the sleek Spitfires of their RAF hosts. British pilots smirk. Good luck outrunning a 190 in that bathtub, one jokes. Even among allies, the Jug is underestimated, but the Americans are eager, proud. They climb into the cockpits of their new machines, unaware that their first missions will test not just their aircraft, but their courage. Their orders are simple. Escort B-17 bombers over France. Protect them at all costs. But simple doesn't mean easy. The Thunderbolt, for all its power, has a problem: range. Its fuel tanks can't carry it far enough to stay with the bombers deep into German territory. When the bombers need them most, the P-47s are forced to turn back, and the Luftwaffe knows it. The German fighters wait, patient, precise. Bf-109s and FW-190s circle above the bombers like hawks. As soon as the Thunderbolts peel away, they strike, tearing into the helpless formations. From the ground, American pilots watch in helpless fury as dozens of silver bombers fall burning from the sky. Morale sinks. The radio channels fill with frustration. "We're bringing a hammer to a knife fight," one pilot growls. Then come the teething problems. Radios cut out mid-battle. Oxygen systems freeze at high altitude. And when the P-47s finally do meet the enemy, the Germans mock them mercilessly. Over the radio, one Luftwaffe ace laughs. "Your fat pig can't climb, Yankee. Go home." But the pilots of the 56th aren't giving up. Under the command of Hub Zemke, a sharp, relentless leader, they start studying their opponent. Zemke knows they can't outturn the Germans, but maybe they can outdive them. He gathers his men in a dim briefing room. A cigarette burns low as he points to a chalkboard covered in notes. "When they come at you, don't turn," he says. "Use your weight, dive, get below them, and let the Jug do what it was born to do, and bring thunder." The next mission comes days later. Clouds hang low as the Thunderbolts climb to meet the bombers. On the horizon, dark specks appear, dozens of FW-190s moving fast. The trap is set. Bandits 11 o'clock high, the radio crackles. The sky explodes, tracer rounds streak across the clouds. A Thunderbolt takes a hit, smoke pours from its engine. The pilot bails out, parachute blossoming like a ghost against the grey. Zemke's voice cuts through the chaos. Stay high, stay fast. Don't turn with them. Two 190s dive on his tail, but instead of braking, Zemke pushes the throttle to the stops and dives. The Jug howls as it picks up speed, faster, 400, 450, 500 miles per hour. The German pilots can't follow. Their planes begin to shake, wings trembling on the edge of a stall. Zemke pulls up hard, loops behind them and squeezes the trigger. 850 caliber guns roar. The first 190 bursts into flame. The second tries to roll away, but the Jug's bullets catch him, shredding the fuselage. Both planes vanish into the clouds below. Over the radio, silence, then cheering. The 56th has its first real victory. But victory comes at a cost. Several Thunderbolts don't return. Wreckage is found scattered across the French countryside. Letters home are written that night in trembling hands. The men begin to understand this isn't glory. It's survival. Still, something changes. The men start to trust their aircraft. They learn that when the bullets start flying, the Jug keeps flying longer than anything else. One pilot returns with half a wing shredded, another with the canopy shattered by cannon fire, yet both land safely. A legend starts to whisper through the ranks. You can shoot a Jug to pieces, but you can't bring it down. The British stop laughing. Even the Germans start taking notice. The Thunderbolt, once dismissed as a joke, is now feared for one reason. It refuses to die. By the summer of 1943, the men of the 56th have transformed. No longer rookies, no longer uncertain. They've learned to harness the storm. Each mission teaches them something new: how to fight, how to survive, and how to strike back. But their greatest challenge is still to come, because soon they'll be sent deeper into enemy skies, farther than any escort has gone before. And this time, the Luftwaffe won't be laughing. It's August 1943. The war in the air is reaching its breaking point. The American 8th Air Force has been pounding Germany with daylight bombing raids, B-17s and B-24s flying in endless waves, high above the clouds. But every mission feels like a gamble with death. For months, the bombers have gone deep into German territory without proper escort. The Luftwaffe knows their routes, their altitudes, their weaknesses. The sky above Germany has become a slaughterhouse. The losses are catastrophic. Crews speak in whispers about Schweinfurt and Regensburg, missions where entire formations vanished. 10-man crews burned alive, planes turned into falling stars. The brass in London is desperate. Something has to change, and then it does. On the runways of Halesworth, a new formation of P-47 Thunderbolts stands ready. Their wings now bristle with auxiliary fuel tanks, ugly, bulbous drums bolted beneath the fuselage. To some, they look ridiculous. To others, they mean one thing: range, at last. The Thunderbolts can fly deep into Germany, far enough to meet the bombers before the Luftwaffe tears them apart. The pilots of the 56th Fighter Group climb into their cockpits. Hub Zemke checks his oxygen line, fastens his harness, and keys the radio. "Gentlemen," he says, voice calm but steady, "today we show them what thunder really sounds like." High above the clouds, the bomber stream stretches for miles. From their cockpits, the Thunderbolt pilots can see the silver dots glittering in formation. Hundreds of bombers pushing toward Schweinfurt, the heart of Germany's ball-bearing industry. If this mission succeeds, it could cripple the Reich's ability to wage war. But the Germans are waiting. Radar operators deep inside Germany track the incoming wave. Sirens wail. Luftwaffe squadrons scramble from airfields across the country. Bf 109s, Hefter 190s swarming into the sky. From the gunner positions on the bombers, black specks appear ahead, then dozens more. The radio erupts with calls. Bandits at 12 o'clock. Bandits everywhere! The Luftwaffe attacks in perfect formation, diving from above. The bombers brace for impact. But this time, they aren't alone. Out of the sun, the P-47s arrive. The Thunderbolts roll into the fight like a storm unleashed. Sunlight flashes off their wings as they dive, engines howling. The first German formation never sees them coming. Zemke's voice cuts through the radio. "Break and engage!" The sky explodes into chaos. 850 caliber guns thunder from each wing. Tracer lines slice through the blue, burning into German fighters mid-turn. A Bf-109 pulls up, trying to climb, but the P-47 dives faster. In seconds, the Jug overtakes it, riddling it with fire. The 109 disintegrates. A German pilot shouts over the radio, panic rising. "Achtung!" They jugs. They dive too fast. Too fast! And below, bomber crews watch in disbelief. The same planes that used to peel away early are now staying with them, tearing through the enemy like avenging angels. One bomber gunner calls out, "Those Jugs are saving our skins today." But the fight is far from over. The Luftwaffe throws everything it has into the fray, wave after wave of fighters. For every German plane that falls, another dives in. Captain Robert Johnson, one of Zemke's men, takes a hit. Cannon shells rip through his fuselage, punching holes the size of fists through the armor. His canopy shatters. Smoke fills the cockpit. Any other aircraft would be finished, but Johnson's Jug keeps flying. He dives away, bullets hammering the fuselage, engines screaming, yet the P-47 refuses to die. When he finally lands back in England, ground crews count 21 holes in the fuselage and wings. And still the engine purrs. The news spreads through the squadrons like wildfire. The Thunderbolt isn't just powerful, it's indestructible. By the end of the mission, the skies over Schweinfurt are littered with wreckage. But this time, it's the Luftwaffe that pays the heavier price. Dozens of German fighters lie burning in the fields below. In the Luftwaffe command rooms, officers stare at reports in disbelief. The American flying tank they once mocked has become a nightmare. Its heavy armor, brutal firepower, and deadly diving speed have changed the balance of the air war. From that day forward, new orders circulate through the German squadrons. Avoid head-on combat with the Thunderbolts. Do not engage in a dive. The joke is over. The laughter is gone. Now even hardened aces speak the name Jug with respect and fear. In the months that follow, the Thunderbolt's legend grows. Its pilots, once doubted, now fly with unshakable confidence. And as the Allies prepare for the invasion of Europe, one thing becomes clear. Air superiority no longer belongs to the Luftwaffe. It belongs to the Jug. But the storm isn't over. The Thunderbolt's next mission will take it lower, closer to the ground, where flak, fire, and chaos await. And there, it will prove just how unstoppable it truly is. By 1944, the P-47 Thunderbolt had shed its early doubts and earned its place in history. What began as a bulky, misunderstood machine was now the very symbol of American air power. A roaring, unstoppable force the Allies called the Jug, and the Germans came to fear as the angel of death in the sky. The war was changing, and so was the Thunderbolt. With every sortie, it evolved, faster, stronger, deadlier. The once awkward fighter had transformed into a juggernaut of destruction, capable not only of winning dogfights, but of reshaping the very battlefield below. As Allied troops pushed toward the heart of occupied Europe, the Thunderbolts followed them, no longer flying high above the clouds, but screaming just feet over the ground. They hunted everything that moved, trains, tanks, trucks, and convoys. Their 850 caliber Brownings unleashed torrents of fire that turned metal into molten ruin. German soldiers learned to dive for cover the instant they heard that deep, thunderous engine, a sound that meant death was seconds away. The Jug's pilots became legends. Men like Francis Gabreski, a Polish-American ace with ice in his veins and fire in his heart, led their squadrons with unrelenting precision. Gabreski hunted the Luftwaffe from Normandy to the Rhineland, racking up victories until his name echoed through both Allied and Axis airfields. To his enemies, he was a ghost, appearing from nowhere, striking with lethal accuracy, then vanishing into the clouds. To his comrades, he was proof that the Thunderbolt wasn't just a machine. It was an extension of its pilot's will. But perhaps no story captured the Jug's brutal resilience more than that of Captain Robert Johnson. During one mission deep over France, Johnson's P-47 was ambushed by a formation of Focke-Wulf 190s. Cannon shells ripped through his fuselage, shattering the canopy and setting the cockpit ablaze. He was hit, bleeding, half-blinded by smoke. The enemy leader, believing the American finished, pulled alongside and fired again, an execution pass. Johnson's plane shuddered, but it did not fall. He gritted his teeth, slammed the throttle forward, and prayed. Somehow, impossibly, the Jug held together. When Johnson finally limped back across the channel, ground crews counted 21 cannon holes, shredded control cables, and a tail nearly torn off. Yet the Thunderbolt's engine, battered, leaking, and smoking, still ran. Mechanics said no plane should have survived that. But the P-47 wasn't just any plane. It was built to take punishment and give it back tenfold. That day, the legend of the Jug's invincibility was sealed forever. By the summer of 1944, the Thunderbolt's presence over Europe was constant, its roar rolling across the countryside like an approaching storm. Pilots flew 3, sometimes 4 sorties a day, supporting the troops on the ground as they clawed their way toward Paris. They strafed rail yards, blew apart armored columns, and ripped through bridges to choke German supply lines. The Jug wasn't just a fighter anymore. It was an instrument of domination. Its thick armor shrugged off flak. Its massive engine absorbed damage that would destroy any other aircraft. And its 8 heavy machine guns turned anything below into twisted wreckage. German reports began describing Thunderbolt attacks as Himmelhunde, hounds of heaven. Pilots and soldiers alike cursed the American plane that came screaming from the clouds and left only fire behind. The Luftwaffe, once the terror of Europe, was now on the defensive. Its best pilots were dead or grounded, its fuel reserves nearly gone, and every time they tried to fight, a swarm of Jugs was waiting. What had started as a laughingstock, a flying milk bottle, as some had called it, had become the iron fist of the Allied air war. The P-47 proved that brute strength and unbreakable endurance could win a war as surely as elegance or speed. It wasn't the sleekest, it wasn't the lightest, but it was the toughest. And in the unforgiving skies of Europe, toughness was everything. The men who flew her called her beautiful. She was loud, heavy, and temperamental, but she brought them home. They trusted her with their lives, and she never let them down. When the bombers needed protection, she was there. When the infantry called for air support, she answered. And when the Luftwaffe came to fight, she met them head-on and won. By the time the war turned toward Germany's heartland, the name Thunderbolt carried weight. It wasn't just a plane anymore. It was a promise. A promise that no matter how fierce the fight, no matter how dark the skies, American thunder would always roll above Europe. The P-47 Thunderbolt was more than a machine. It was a symbol of resilience, of firepower, of courage forged in steel. And as its shadow passed over the fields of France and the ruins of Germany, one truth became clear to all who heard its roar. The Jug didn't just fight the war. It helped win it June 6, 1944, D-Day, the dawn of liberation. As Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, the skies above them belonged to one unmistakable presence, the P-47 Thunderbolt. Its massive frame cuts through the morning mist like a predator, its engine roaring with fury, its 8 50-caliber Brownings loaded and ready. Below, chaos reigns, the thunder of artillery, the screams of men, the clash of steel and sea. Above it all, the Jug flies low, its shadow racing across the sand, bringing death to anything bearing a swastika. The Thunderbolt was no longer the awkward newcomer of 1943. It had matured into a weapon of absolute dominance. As German fortifications unleashed everything they had, flak bursts, machine gun fire, even desperate rocket barrages, the P-47s dove headfirst into the inferno. Their mission was simple: clear the skies and crush the enemy's defenses. No bombers, no long-range escorts, just the Jugs and their pilots, carving a path for the men below to live another hour longer. From 10,000 feet, they spotted the first targets, German artillery batteries hidden in the hedgerows beyond Omaha Beach. The Thunderbolts rolled into their dives, the world spinning past their canopies. Tracer rounds streaked upward like fiery needles, but the Jugs didn't flinch. Their guns opened fire, 8 streams of death slamming into the ground below. Trucks exploded, gun barrels twisted, and entire positions vanished in smoke. The soldiers on the beaches cheered as the thunder above answered their desperate cries for help. Each sortie that day was an act of courage and endurance. Pilots flew through walls of anti-aircraft fire, their windshields cracked, wings peppered with shrapnel. Yet they kept coming, hour after hour, mission after mission. When the call came for air support, there was always a Jug somewhere nearby, waiting for coordinates. In one report, a German commander wrote, "We are being attacked by aircraft that do not die." By midday, the P-47s had turned their fury inland. Panzer divisions, attempting to counterattack the beachheads, found themselves trapped on narrow French roads, perfect targets. The Thunderbolts descended in pairs, unleashing their bombs and rockets into the convoys. Tanks erupted in towering columns of fire. The smell of burning fuel and metal filled the countryside. The Luftwaffe tried to respond, but their once proud air force was a shadow of its former self. Few dared to engage the Jugs now. Those who did never returned. One German pilot later recalled watching a flight of Thunderbolts rip through a panzer column from miles away. "They came out of the sun," he said, "and in seconds there was nothing left. The ground itself seemed to burn. The roar of their engines, that deep, rolling thunder, became a sound the German army would never forget." As the invasion gained ground, the Thunderbolts' role grew even more crucial. They patrolled the skies over the hedgerow maze of northern France, strafing enemy reinforcements before they could reach the front lines. They cut supply lines, destroyed bridges, and shattered rail networks. Every mission brought the Allies closer to breaking through. The men on the ground began calling the P-47 their guardian angel. For the pilots, though, Normandy was more than just another campaign. It was a crucible. The air was thick with smoke and fear. They could see the carnage below, the soldiers pinned down, the bodies in the surf, the tanks burning in the distance. Every trigger pull, every bomb drop felt personal. They weren't just fighting for victory. They were fighting for every man, struggling to survive on that blood-soaked beach. Many never returned. The flak over Normandy was relentless, and every day the 56th, 78th, and 362nd fighter groups lost brave souls. But for each pilot who fell, another took his place, and the Thunderbolt kept flying. There was no stopping it. Its roar became part of the invasion itself, the rhythm of liberation. By July, the Luftwaffe's presence over France had all but collapsed. The Germans had learned the hard way: to face a Thunderbolt was to gamble with death. Even the sound of its engine became a warning to those below. Soldiers dove for cover at the first rumble of that unmistakable roar. Some German officers ordered their men to march only at night, terrified of what waited above during daylight. But it didn't matter. The Jug could find them anywhere. In the span of a few short months, the P-47 had changed the course of the war in Western Europe. It had shielded the invasion, crushed German resistance, and helped carve the path to Paris. The laughter that once followed its first test flights had long since vanished. Now even the enemy spoke of it with awe and fear. They called it the Jug, but over Normandy it earned a new name: the Thunder of Freedom. Wherever it flew, the enemy fell silent, and the oppressed found hope in the sound of those engines. The sky itself seemed to tremble as the P-47 carved its legacy into history. And as the dust settled over the beaches of Normandy, one truth rang louder than all the thunder that came before. The Jug was no joke. It was the storm that broke the Reich, By the end of World War II, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt had become more than just an aircraft. It was a legend carved into steel, sky, and memory. From the frozen clouds over Germany to the beaches of Normandy, the Jug had flown more than 500,000 sorties, unleashed over 130,000 tons of bombs, and destroyed 7,000 enemy aircraft. It was the backbone of the Allied air war, a symbol of raw power, courage, and the will to endure when everything else burned away. But perhaps its greatest victory was the lives it saved. Pilots who once doubted the Thunderbolt came to call it their guardian. Its thick armor and roaring engine brought men home when no other plane could. Francis Gabreski, Robert Johnson, and countless others survived missions that should have been their last, not because of luck, but because they flew the Jug. It could take hits that tore through wings, punctured fuel tanks, shattered canopies, and still somehow it refused to die. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, the skies of Europe were littered with wrecks, but not many of them were Thunderbolts. They had endured the war's fiercest storms and emerged victorious. To the men who flew her, the Jug was more than a machine. It was a trusted friend. They remembered the vibration of that massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine, the comforting growl that meant home was still within reach. They remembered the way it handled, heavy yet solid, like a warhorse that knew its purpose, and though newer planes would soon take its place, the sleek P-51 Mustangs, the dawn of jet fighters, the Thunderbolt story never faded. Its power, its toughness, and its relentless spirit continued to inspire generations of aviators. Even decades later, when you stand at an airshow and hear that deep, unmistakable rumble of a radial engine rolling across the sky, it sends a chill down your spine. Because that sound, that thunder, is the echo of history itself. The Germans had laughed when they first saw it, a heavy, awkward brute they called the flying milk bottle. But their laughter died in the roar of 850 caliber guns that tore through the skies of Europe. They mocked it. Until it hunted them, they underestimated it, until it dominated them. And when the smoke cleared, the last sound they ever heard was thunder, the P-47. Thunderbolt stands as a timeless reminder that strength isn't always found in grace or beauty, but in resilience, endurance, and the unbreakable will to survive. In every battle it fought, in every pilot it brought home, the Jug proved one truth that echoes through history: never underestimate the underdog. To this day, when that familiar growl cuts through the air, veterans look up and smile. They remember the roar that brought hope, the shadow that guarded freedom, and the storm that ended tyranny. The P-47 wasn't just thunder in name, it was thunder in spirit. And though the war is long over, the sound of its legacy still shakes the skies.